What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If. If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my second channel, so if you want some more what ifs, go check out my other channels. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. The escaping trio dropped out of the Shunshin near the borders of Hi-no-Kuni, and Kusa Naruto released them and promptly fell face in the dirt. Kiyomi too joined shortly after Naruto. Kiyomi, the young Namikaze, rolled them, began checking their bodies for injuries. Not finding any, she pulled them into the shade of a tree. Rei was worried. She did not know how far they were from Konoha, but she had to keep an eye out until they awakened. Hearing the swoosh of leaves rustling, Rei whipped around to see the curvaceous blue battle-dressed Mei with two IWA shinobi. The girl had heard of the barbarians that were IWA and how they had risen to be the most renowned. Rei wasted no time and pulled two kunai out, letting them fly at the vital necks of the ninja. Mei's lips curled upwards at the feisty girl, deftly looping her fingers through holes and twirled them to a stop in her hands. You must be Rei Namikaze. She felt her muscles tense at the woman identifying her. How do you know who I am? Mei handed the caught kunai to her escorts. How would I not know about the sister of Naruto? Walking towards the Namikaze, Mei had a friendly smile plastered on her face. I am Mei Terumi. I have been with Naruto and Kiyomi since Kiri's destruction. Nice to meet you. Hearing that this woman knew her brother and had found them, Rei felt a lot more comfortable. Ms. Terumi stuck her hand out as a gesture of greeting, and Rei took the delicate hand in her own. Before Rei could notice, Mei had wrapped a hand around the jewel resting between her breasts, running her fingers across the yukai gem. It hummed at the residual yukai infused from her time being so close to Naruto. Mei spoke to it quietly. I will need you to rouse Naruto. The gem heard her and went silent, giving it a quick tug. The string holding to Rei snapped and Mei moved around the Namikaze to get at the down demons and gently wrapped one of his large hands around the brilliant yukai stone. Naruto took a deep intake of breath and his gills sliced open, flaring briefly before sealing themselves. Naruto opened his eyes, already knowing all within a mile radius. Mei, I am glad you came to meet us here. Handing the jewel back to Rei, she tied the string back around her neck, and the once vibrant blue pendant was now a listless green rock tucked in her bust. The sultry smile Mei usually wore replaced with a worried frown. What happened? Naruto placing a hand on the cheek of his demoness. Naruto began. Kushina summoned a god. You fought a god. Which one? It was not a fight so much as it was a simple game. He crippled myself and Kiyomi within moments of engaging. As for who it was, the broken Mei took a sharp breath, knowing the story of how demons came and why many driven into madness. Then what will you do? Naruto, with Konoha being able to draw him into this world at will. Frowning briefly, he looked at us, remembering the feeling of all his strength taken, leaving him kneeling at the feet of the god. I will find a way. I have thousands upon thousands of years worth of knowledge taken from people and demons. If there's a way, it will come to me eventually. Mei huffed at his inadvertent flaunting of how intelligent he was. Well, Konoha survived, so we can assume that this attempt was a failure. Naruto chuckled. Perhaps in destroying Konoha I failed, but it will be right there when I am ready. Saving my little sister, though, was a success that outweighs my defeat. Pushing himself to stand, Naruto shouldered his beloved half. Well, I suppose we will travel to IWA. Kiyomi and I could use a soft bed to rest in until we recover the strength we have left. With one hand around the demoness waist, he reached for the others. Take hands. I will shunshin us to the gates. Each person linked hands, with Mei holding Naruto. Closing his eyes, Naruto focused his yukai and their bodies blurred before vanishing towards their destination, phasing into sight before the mighty gates of IWA. Naruto pushed Kiyomi into Mei's arms and collapsed into spasms on the ground. But Tsuchikage arrived to find the country's savior shaking on the ground, snapping out of the mind-baffling hypnotic sight. He barked quick orders. You two grab Naruto and bring him to their home. Turning sharply, Inoki beckoned for his guard. Bring me 4 of the ninjas slated for execution. The ninja nodded and vanished with their own shunshin. The demonic duo now tucked into their royal purple bed, with Mei, Rei and the Tsuchikage standing watch over the pair. The silence broken by the gruff voice of the elderly man. What happened with Naruto's strength? There should have been no complications. Mei tucked loose strands of hair from the faces of both of the bed-ridden demons. From what Naruto told me, Kushina summoned the horrible god that tied their souls, which was also the broken. Grunting in acknowledgement, Inoki finally turned to the white ball-gown garbed Namikaze. Turning from the bed, Inoki finally took a good look at the new arrival. Rei stood stock still with her once pristine snow-white dress dirted, and the neat bun of hair left disheveled and comping apart. Closing his eyes in frustration, he took the hand of the Namikaze girl. Come girl, you must be wanting to get out of that dress. I will take you to get something to change into. Rei put up a weak resistance. Oh no, it's okay. Kiyomi has my belongings from Konoha. I can get some clothes from my scroll. The aged leader smiled grandfatherly at her. It seems Kiyomi is in no condition to give you anything. You will shop in the finest of stores Iwabakure has. To offer the people will gladly give you anything to repay the debt we owe to your brother that made the girl stumble. My brother, that is the first time I have heard anyone else relate him to myself. Rei cracked a smile at Inoki, referring Naruto as her brother. Finally relenting, she accepted the wrinkled hand leading her into the bright sun. The contrast of aged pair walked the herringbone roadways of Iwagakure seeking the nicest of shopping. As they moved about, the crowd parted easily for them. While many gave great smiles and greeted the Tsuchikage with cheery hellos and good days, Rei watched all the people with fascination. The residents were so happy and helpful, almost a complete opposite of Konoha. Before the depression there was no sense of friendship with anyone you passed. Almost no one waved or smiled as they milled about their days, and the situation got worse once Fire Country cut expenditures. But here in Iwa, everyone shook hands, smiled, and generally cared. Inoki saw the Namikaze watching the people with fascination and broke her, marveling. Incredible, is it not? Rei gave Inoki a confused look. Just 2 short years ago my people had very little in the way of happiness, trudging through these streets with lost looks. Now they move with a spring in their steps and smiles on their faces, all because of those three and their incredible powers. Rei was given the best quality of clothes for free from any store she visited. Her choices were minimalistic, trying not to take advantage of the goodwill towards her, settling on spandex ankle-length pants with matching shirt, a standard Iwagakure flak jacket left unzipped, simple open-toed sandals. The girl's problems temporarily forgotten amidst her foreign shopping adventure. The joy around her seeped into her, bringing out smiles. Rei laughed as her old escort told her stories of the hijinks her brother unknowingly found himself in, one being the accidental obliteration of the female hot spring walls when Naruto tested his improved air bullet jutsu. Throughout the tale she found herself more entranced with Naruto after his fateful execution 5 years earlier, and resolved to find out more and spend time with him. Reaching the home after her 3-hour-long spree, she found Naruto was already up and conversing with Kiyomi. I know, but we cannot even hide knowing the god has a form. Eventually he will grow stronger and find every last one of us. The blonde demon was stony-faced as he persuaded his mate to see his side. Then what can we do? The red-haired demoness had a worried look on her face. Naruto closed his eyes, thinking on everything he knew, every memory and angle. The memories flew past him, both his own and all he absorbed, like an old school flame slideshow. Finally everything stopped on his brush with assimilation earlier, and he visualized himself standing third person from himself, watching the god with a deranged smile. Forcefully drew his strength away, pausing, replaying. He went over those few seconds of helplessness thousands of times in the course of the moments outside. Finally opening his eyes, he had a small smile. I have an idea. Well, come on lad, tell us. Everyone was paying rapt attention to his next words. I will become just as strong as the god. And how will you do that, love? Kiyomi piped in, opening his mouth to respond. Instead he snapped it shut. It would be easier to show you. Inoki, do you have any criminals to spare? The old man nodded, indicating a yes. I had my assistant work through the papers to sentence 4 death row inmates into your care. Snapping his fingers, the door opened and 4 rugged, angry-looking men were knelt at Naruto's feet. Now pay close attention and you will see. Raising his hands he placed them upon 2 of the men and removed all traces of chakra. The men slumped to the floor, exhausted. Shifting, he brought his hands inches from the next victims, and slowly they watched as blue chakra rose from the skin, flowing into his palm. They too fell to the floor. No one understood the significance of either draining, but they didn't have to wait long before Naruto began his explanation. I will do exactly as the god did. I will draw the Yukai from something a few meters away. Once I perfect it, I can compete with the god by taking from his power as he takes from me. Clarity dawned on all those present. That's brilliant. I could just kiss you. And she did, placing both hands on his cheeks and drew a deep kiss from his lips. Kiyomi ignored the twinge of jealousy she saw cross Mei's face and Rei's slight embarrassment. The prisoners were removed and Naruto began plotting his next course of action. We will need to absorb the remaining demons in this realm to take Konoha. Inoki, do you know where I would be able to find the nearest demon container? Stroking his chin, that Tsuchikage thought over his reconnaissance reports. There's actually one in Taki the Seven Tails. If I remember correctly, young girl with teal hair. I will have someone bring you a dossier on the Jinchuriki. Then we have a new destination. Turning to his sister, Naruto asked if she wanted to come, not bothering to ask his other 2 companions, knowing they were on board. Back in Konoha, people were in a frenzy. The wedding of the century was crashed and the Yandane was defeated. The whole section around the gardens was closed off and the medical teams began slowly sifting through the gore and viscera, tallying up the dead and wounded. The numbers grew as the bodies were identified and bagged. Now we find Minato being patched up by the best medics available. Grawatch rear poking. The medic touched a bruised rib and began repairing the internal damage. Slowly the pain eased and he moved, signaling the attendant to wrap his torso in gauze. Finishing the wrappings, the ninja left and Kushina entered before the door could close. Minato, how are you? Shifting his muscles, or could feel the dull pains. He grimaced at his defeat by the Kyuubi. I am mostly fine, Kushina. What happened after you fell unconscious? Naruto continued his rampage. It was horrifying to see the people we knew being torn apart before my eyes. The Uzumaki closed her eyes briefly to banish the memories of that morning. He was incredibly strong. He warded off jutsu with just a movement of his wings or absorbed the rest. I was terrified watching him so easily strike everyone down. Minato could feel the blood behind his eyebrows throb painfully. Then what stopped his advances? I summoned the god to stop the Kyuubi again. Minato's eyes widened quickly and he took a hold of her arm. Who did you sacrifice, Kushina? His voice was sharp as he stared into her eyes. And no one. The god saw the Kyuubi and said he would do it without one. Breathing a sigh of relief, Minato moved off the bed, grabbing his torn cloak from the rack and swung it around his shoulders. Good, the people cannot know of what the god usually wants. Holding the door open, he beckoned Kushina. Out with him, let's find Kakashi. He can give me a report. Shuffling out of the room with Kushina hot on his heels, he looked for his student within the hospital. Taiki sat with the stinging scars in the wake of his defeat. The medics had tried to save the eye, but it was for naught. It had been damaged beyond repair. Ocular muscles had been torn, the retina detached, even the orbital socket had 3 claw marks through it, showing just how strong the nails of the woman had been. He had been offered transplants, but he had declined in favor of keeping it. As a reminder of his hatred for the Kyuubi and the bitch, tentatively he reached up his hand and ran his fingers along the raised scars, feeling the searing pain still left after the healers were done. Fuck, it stings. Taiki whipped his hand from the wound, frustrated with his current situation. Picking up some gauze to cover the still sensitive skin, Taiki began looking like a blonde. Kakashi, he had no one to report to at the moment, so he would wait for his father to summon him. Making himself comfortable, he began planning how he would train to not suffer such a humiliating loss again. Within a matter of weeks, the tale of Konoha being attacked directly by one man and kidnapping the only daughter of the Hokage on the day of her wedding, no less. The sensationalized story spread like wildfire from schools to brothels. Everyone heard, and the thing on everyone's mind is who was the god amongst men who could pull off such a feat. The man in question was now standing menacingly, staring the Nanabi Jinchuriki down. Flashback setting down near the village of Taki. Naruto let his sensory gills to feel all and map out the village, finding a good spot to appear and hide. He flickered in with his trio within the leaves of the great tree surrounding them. They prepared by Naruto and Kiyomi, warping the tree to provide more cover. Naruto, how are you going to get the Nanabi from the girl? Ray inquired. I will kill her, and hopefully consume it before it can fully escape from the host. Naruto responded easily. Ray was taken back by how easily he would kill a girl he had no connection to. Do you have to kill a Fu? Ray checked the dossier to find her name. Naruto paused for a moment. There are other ways, but they are far more hassle than catching her off guard before she can fight. His tone conveyed a feeling of annoyance. Ray picked up on his irritation at her wanting him to keep the girl alive. Oh, okay. She was not that confident in her personal standing with Naruto to try and change his mind. The subject though was picked up by May. Maybe we could keep the girl alive, no need to cause more casualties. The girl didn't do anything wrong, right? May gave a pleading look to Kiyomi to back up a fellow woman, sighing. Kiyomi decided to help out there cause they do have a point. Naruto, this Fu girl is innocent. We could just siphon the bijou out and let her be on her way. The demon sighed, seeing that even his own mate wanted this. I suppose if this is what you want, then I can arrange to keep the girl alive. During the process, Kiyomi smiled brightly and gave him a hug, eyeing the two standing awkwardly. She pulled them both in, allowing Naruto's strong arms to wrap around them all, and so the plan began. He would press the girl until their meeting, where she would be so high-strung the tailed beast's power would surface almost instantly. The first step was putting the girl on edge, such as influencing the branches to sway, throwing off her footing every time she landed. The second was finding her pets. With Naruto and Kiyomi's sensory prowess, they found every nook and cranny of where she nested insects charged with bijou energy. Every little bug found they would drain the yukai and remove it from the large chakra net the Jinchuriki had formed. The final step was to prevent the girl from having any sort of meaningful rest. The sleep deprivation was achieved with glimpses of their clothing when she would glance around. A Jinjutsu siphoning off her own chakra produced whispers on the wind, calling out for her, and if she still slept, Naruto would jostle her slumbering body, bringing her from the much-needed rest. This carried on for the last week, and it showed in the Jinchuriki's appearance. Her eyes had dark bags, and the once pristine combed mint green hair was now unkempt and knotted. Fu looked every part the zombie. She felt like her eyes were heavy, but could not sleep, fearing the whispers and whatever was waking her undetected. What is going on? I can hear and catch glimpses of them everywhere. What do they want? Fu was entering hysteria, and every shadow she began to fear. She crouched down and clutched her head to her knees, trying to drown out the voices. Naruto and the trio watched the young Jinchuriki break down, crying hysterically. Ray felt truly terrible for doing this to such a sweet girl, but she would survive the mental torture And it was better than the alternative. It seems she has reached her breaking point. Now would be the best time to draw it out. Remember the plan. Naruto seemed to float down to a shadowed branch and the girls took their positions, taking control of the parasitic genjutsu. Naruto began raising the voices from mere whispers to skull-splintering screams. Fu felt pain at the volume until all at once everything went silent, and to Fu now the silence was even more terrifying than the whispers. Naruto knelt and whispered hotly into her ear. Fu, she felt the breath and she turned towards the voice, and saw nothing again. Fu, the girl's eyes darted all around trying to find the source. Fu, this time she turned her head and came eye to eye with the crimson pools boring into her soul. Scurrying backwards she tried to make space between them, but it did no good as she was shoved forward by Kiyomi. Getting traction, she turned again only to face Rei in her path. Looking, Fu saw now may block the final route. She was surrounded. Flashback end. What do you want from me? Fu screamed. Fu of the Nanabai, we have come for you. His voice was a rumbling echo that reverberated through the area. The Jinchuriki grabbed her head as the green bijou chakra poured from her skin. Soon she was wreathed in it, wings and all. She swung her arms, sending the extended appendages all around her, forcing Mei and Rei to jump to escape. Naruto and Kiyomi instead grabbed hold of the Yukai and began siphoning what they could, watching them stop the chakra in its tracks. She changed tactics. Fluttering her wings, she took off into the leaves, hoping to lose them in the foliage and hide. Fu slowed her speed, no longer hearing anyone, and she held her back against a branch, taking deep breaths, holding her racing heart. She did not get much respite when she heard wood splintering, and once she had pinpointed its direction it was too late. Crunch. Naruto barreled through the branches, slamming his shoulder into her stomach, driving her through the tree limb and two more below. Fu lay still as her chakra fluctuated, trying to maintain cohesion but was failing. Naruto pulled himself off the unconscious young lady and signaled for the others to join him. Rei appeared first and she gasped at the girl's rough shape. She had many splinters embedded around her ribs and assumed more were in her lower back. Mei landed next and she too took notice of the girl's injuries. Naruto, I don't think you needed to do so much damage to the poor girl. Mei started to channel her chakra to heal the young woman, but Naruto pushed her back. What was that for? She questioned. Naruto never took his eyes off the downed lady. She is not done yet. The Nanabai will not allow it to prove his point. Green Yukai exploded from her, forcing all the splinters out, and Fu's body rose from the ground like a puppet. Her eyes now poured green flames reaching for the sky, and her form now looked like a miniature of the bijou itself. Fu's head swiveled, taking in her surroundings, and she focused on Naruto intently, giving off a deadly screech, sending all the birds flying and everyone within earshot to hold their ears. Like a bullet she shot off, scythe-like limbs leading the charge. Meeting her halfway, the bijou's blades raked along Naruto's wings, leaving his Yukai to sew itself together, pushing her off. Naruto threw the girl into Kiyomi's waiting claws. Kiyomi thrust her hand out, punching a hole through the Yukai cloak and leaving a gaping wound in the woman's chest. She screamed in pain, but it was shrugged off as the Yukai swirled and filled it with new flesh. Fu's anger only rose with the assault, and the Yukai began to solidify around the girl. The iron-like carapace formed, which extended, forming over her shoulders, and a large rhinoceros beetle horn began to grow from her head. Naruto did not give her much respite. He grabbed hold from behind, his large legs wrapped around her midsection and his hands pulling the horn, forcing her head upwards. Yotan, Shakugaryogen Futon, Shinkajyoku. Mei and Rei fired their respective jutsu into the unprotected torso of the Jinchuriki. Naruto released the girl, leaving her unbalanced and unable to dodge the successive techniques to her body. The lava burst as it impacted, covering her body in the molten rock, and was quickly hardened by the cooling spheres of wind. The pile of lava stone radiated the heat still churning beneath the cooled surface. Briefly the girls feared they had killed the poor girl as they landed next to a deep breathing Naruto. A loud rumble echoed out and the stone cocoon exploded in chunks of rock and lava. Naruto brought his wings across the ladies, the rocks bouncing harmlessly off while the molten drops ran off, leaving burning trails in the flesh cauterizing the wounds. Fu now stood in full form, her human body barely visible beneath the coalesced chakra. Her face covered in an iron-like helmet, the beetle horn now joined by two smaller ones from the side of her head. Glimpses of her face could be seen beneath the helmet. When the Yukai would flicker and become transparent for a split second, throwing her head back, she let out a screech that shook the tree, tossing leaves into the wind, and her charge began anew. The transformed girl vanished and appeared with her horn clashing against the reinforced wings of Naruto. The eerie glow beneath the helmet intensified and she lunged forward, sending Naruto through the foliage, shaking her head. Fu targeted Kiyomi, stomping large dents into the branch as she raced across the wooden battlegrounds. Kiyomi, for the first time since her feral days, sprouted the nine tails she was known for as Fu closed in. Kiyomi fanned the tails obscuring her body, and just as Fu touched them they parted to show Kiyomi had twirled to one side while leaving the impression she had never moved at all. The Jinchuriki barreled past and off the thick branch, and the former Kyuubi quickly met with the other girls. Kiyomi, do you have any way of stopping her? Mei asked. The demoness shook her head, indicating a negative. I don't have the physical abilities to stop her. Naruto was the brute force between us. I use finesse and misdirection. Ray piped in. What about your tails? Could you not tumble mountains and reshape the world with mere swings of them? I cannot. Since my rebirth most of my physical strength is within Naruto, just as he is not as careful in his actions, because I possess most of that trait. Between us we are still technically one being separated. All three saw the Jinchuriki fly up, beginning her search for them. Well, we better come up with a plan until Naruto gets back. Mei warned. I got a plan. Kiyomi, distract her for a minute. May keep her on the move with some lava. Nodding, the girls took off and began the assault. Kiyomi jumped, meeting the beetle girl midair, and she began some fast-paced strikes, leaving palm-sized holes in the yukai as she pushed hers through cloak. Kiyomi's strikes did little to harm the girl, but it served to focus her ire. Just as Fu moved to strike the demoness, she felt more lava splashing across her back and running over her body. Giving an annoyed grunt, she swatted Kiyomi away with the blunt sides of her scythes and made a break for Mei. Kiyomi flew, bouncing off branches until her body came to rest on the slight ramp created from the tree's roots, meeting earth. Struggling briefly, she slackened and rested, letting her yukai heal her shattered bones from the Jinchuriki's seemingly minor blow and the subsequent fall. Mei backpedaled, continuing to spew lava to slow the transformed lady. Finally reaching a thicker offshoot of wood, Mei knelt behind it, hoping she garnered Ray enough time to do whatever it was she wanted. Sliced, the branch was bisected just above Mei's head as the razor-sharp scythes cleaved through it. Easily rolling away, she let loose a torrent of lava. Reaching her hand into the molten rock, she grabbed it like a blanket and threw it over herself and hardened it, forming a dome. Fu stabbed her kama-like claw into the rock and chipped a few pieces away, but those few turned into many, and her flurry of strikes punctured the earthen shell. Mei held her hands against the rock, reinforcing the stone and fixing the holes. Finally fed up with the barrier, Fu headbutted the dome with all the strength she had, and the whole thing shattered, sending Mei through the tree, tumbling to the earth. Bouncing off all the obstacles, Ray finally made her appearance with her hand glowing with the writing for explosion. Dashing to the girl, she slammed her hand into the woman's chest, burning the seal into Fu. Jumping back, she braced herself for the blast, and she was not disappointed. The seal made a low shock wave, then a whoosh of air as it all drew back into the seal, and the Jinchuriki's body was consumed in the deafening explosion. With the girl indisposed, Ray went looking for her group and found Kiyomi failing to help the lava user up. As the fire subsided, Fu could be seen with burns across her body, but healing, with the yukai reforming around her body. Seeing the enemy on the ground, she jumped off the tree and free fell to the earth. Ray packed Mei over, sitting the unconscious woman against one of the tree's many roots, and Kiyomi joined her, breathing shallow and labored. The Namikaze looked at the two, feeling bad for not being able to finish creating the seal faster, and her new friends were injured because of it. As the conscious women took a breather, they heard a whistling echoing all around. Glancing at the surroundings, they couldn't pinpoint its location until a boom was heard, and the earth a few meters away rose up like a wave in all directions, tearing the soft ground asunder. Shielding their eyes, they peered through fingers to see the mostly unharmed Fu standing and making a slow walk towards them. It seemed now that Fu had victory. She wanted to make them feel suffering, because she never used the sharpened edges of her appendages. Rather, she swatted the girls around easily with the blunt sides or back of them, knocking both Kiyomi and Ray away. Fu focused on the lava woman. Naruto shook his head and pulled himself from the indentation he made in the trunk. Holding his head, as listened for the battle going on and heard the shrill screaming moving. He saw Fu raise her razor-edged arm, ready to slice right through Mei. His eyes widened, the softened pupils sharpened into their elliptical shape, and his crimson iris bled, filling the scara. He pushed off the tree, tucking his wings in, and nose dived in slow motion. Fu's arm began cutting her skin. Next, it glided through her muscle and was not even stopped by the collarbone. Just as it cleared the bone, it was ripped out as Naruto impacted Fu's chest, sending them both tumbling across the earth, with the kama-like object no longer blocking the arteries. Blood jettisoned from Mei in a grotesque fountain. Kiyomi raced to Mei's side, her yukai already flowing into the woman, holding the arteries closed. Even in the few unattended seconds, Mei lost much blood, covering the ground and tree root in the spray. Without Naruto's yukai, hers alone could not heal, but she could stave it off until Naruto joins her. After they settled on the ground, Naruto jumped onto Fu's chest and began raining blows into the iron-like helmet cover her face. Fu could put up little fight as her head wrung and body twitched in spasm. With each strike, the yukai could not hold up any longer, and his hardened fists met flesh, sending the mint-haired girl's head sideways with a sickening crack. Flipping them over, he positioned himself on her lower back and took hold of the girl's head in the crook of his arm. He wanted her to Suffer, he began applying pressure, pulling her spine into a painful arch, and Fu began grasping at his arm, trying to stop the pain. Her eyes clouded over and her neck, feeling the shattering strength, ready to pull her head off. Once tanned skin was now a sickly purple as blood could not travel past the arms. Fu gasped for air that never came. Naruto Kiyomi received no response from her call, and he only continued, trying to separate their target's head from her body, flooding her mental powers with Yukai. She yelled Naruto. Finally, like a switch, his head snapped to her, his eyes returning to normal, and he quickly released the no longer responsive Jinchuriki. Staring at the limp girl, he scrambled up and ran to his love and knelt next to Mei as her body convulsed from pain and lack of blood. Together once again, their Yukai swirled into the brilliant purple. Bone came out like scaffolding, filling the gap. Muscle strung itself back into form, and skin stitched together. The wound closed up and the convulsing stopped. Mei now only looked like a pale ghost sitting in her blood-covered clothes. With Mei no longer in danger, Naruto finally took notice of Rei standing off to the side, tears brimming in her eyes. The Namikaze immediately rushed into his arms, apologizing profusely. "I'm sorry, Naruto, it was my fault. I took too long to finish my seal." And Mei almost died. The rest of her words were garbled by sobs and deep breaths. Never once had Naruto ever been in the position of having a woman crying in his arms, so instinct took over, and it was to quickly pass his sister into the bloodied arms of his lover. While walking away, Rei, thinking he was angry that she had got his friend injured, only cried harder. Now in Kiyomi's arms, Naruto drowned out the cries and focused on the job at hand. Reaching the unconscious Jinchuriki, he rolled her over and pushed her torn shirt away from the seal on her stomach, watching it pulse as the Nanabi was most likely trying to escape. With the practice of 1,000 skilled hands, Naruto manipulated the seal, easily redirecting the Yukai from releasing into the host, but outward in a specific point. Slowly the paths into Fu closed and all of the chakra was beginning to flow from the new inked path. Before long, Naruto reset the seal, and the Yukai that did escape bulged and shifted until a beetle much larger than anything that has existed was formed. The Nanabi's wings took to motion, and he was hovering before Naruto. Its mandibles clacked and words came from the impossible source. "So I come to meet my host's tormentor, and I assume my executioner." Naruto was surprised by the articulate bijou. "Yeah, that would be me then. Make Fu's death quick. I do not wish her to suffer. You mistake my intentions. I have promised to not kill her, and I will stay true my word." The beetle made an agitated sound. "To remove my Yukai from the host would prove fatal. My chakra has become intertwined with her. I can keep her alive. It's more difficult than simply killing her, but the decision has already been made for me. You take me for a fool, then it is impossible to separate us. At this point the line between us has become blurred." The bijou was unamused by Naruto's claims, getting the strong feeling to simply absorb the bijou and stop its talking. "I am everything a demon and human could never be. I am both. I can things they only dream of." Clicking the chitinous mouthpieces, Nanabi had enough. "Do what you must. We are at your mercy regardless. I only hope your claims have merit." The Yukai dissipated and flowed back into its host. Naruto placed one's hand upon Fu's forehead and one on her seal. The hand upon her forehead began to glow, and everything that was Fu melted into Naruto's mind. Everything she was in as the hand upon her seal fought to absorb her chakra and the Yukai, but was only slowed for a moment. Fu's breathing was slowing, her heartbeat pumped less, and finally her blood stopped. Naruto released her head and continued removing all the chakra with haste. He had a small window to complete the transfer. Minutes passed and sweat dripped from Naruto's forehead. He had never taken this much power at once, and it was taxing to stay concentrated with the once silent urge in his mind now so vocal. Pulling his hand away, the last wisps of green Yukai jumped the gap. Already Fu's chakra-less corpse was beginning to cool, and he needed to act quickly. Placing his lips to the former Jinchurikis, he released an equal amount of chakra back into her body, and it once again took its place in her navel, and the chakra system branched out, searing new paths through her body. Lightning coursed in his hands, and Fu's body arched at an painful angle, and her heart pumped once more. Once complete, he cradled her head and focused on only the entirety of Fu within his mind, hoping he managed to correctly separate her from himself. He forced the memories to reactivate within the synapse. Each neuron fired with precision, reorganizing the influx of knowledge back into order. 2. Visualize the process. Think of her brain as RAM, and the power was cut. Naruto is the hard disk, and he just loaded the RAM back up with everything that was lost. Hopefully that makes it a little clearer on how I am trying to explain it. Message me if you need further clarification. Naruto sat back, taking large breaths, watching and waiting for his experimental gamble to hopefully pay off. Fu's eyes opened in alarm, her mouth taking in gulps of air, her body begging for oxygen to replace the stale carbon dioxide that had settled in her blood. It was not to last long. Soon Fu's eyes spun in her head and the breaths became irregular and her body went into seizures with her brain not having sufficient oxygen. Kiyomi, get over here quickly, I need your help instantly. The demoness was at his side and the purple chakra exploded in his haste. Placing his mouth again over the resurrected girls, he filled her lungs with the healing yukai. An oxygen yukai followed the circulatory system and her skin took a glowing royal purple hue. Wherever the blood went, the seizures stopped with the influx of oxygen and the yukai corrected any of the damage caused by cerebral hypoxia. Sitting back, Naruto knew she would live. Both demons quickly cleansed themselves of any air, dirt, or debris. Looking over, he saw the enormous circle of grass and other vegetation from his uncontrolled burst. Ray lay next to Mei, her eyes tear-stained, and Naruto felt bad for pushing her away. He just didn't know how to deal with it. Turning to his love, he helped her up and into a searing kiss. Thank you for taking Ray. Kiyomi held him. Hearing his heartbeat, she smiled. It's okay, but you will have to face it eventually. She is the most emotionally dependent upon you. It seems he was grimacing at the thought of having to learn to emotionally comfort someone. I suppose I will learn. Letting go of the warm woman, he placed his palm to the ground and he spun a small orb of his own yukai. Letting it sit, he pushed all that was the nanabi into the ball with little effort, since he did not need to perfectly match a brain pattern. The sphere morphed and a beetle once again took shape. The bijou looked surprised as it was conscious once again. This is impossible. Naruto smirked. I told you I can do things demons could never dream of. Shaking its carapace and wings, Nanabi took flight and landed on Fu's chest. Feeling her heartbeat and chakra flowing, the bijou hummed happily. So it would seem I do have to ask, what is your purpose for resurrecting me? I will need help when the time comes, and yours would be an advantage. You kept your word concerning Fu, so I am indebted. Ask and I will do what I can to help. Excellent. Until then, stay safe. Chome. Naruto smiled, leaving to pick up Mei. Kiyomi followed suit, held Ray. Naruto and Kiyomi activated Shunshin. Their forms became transparent and they vanished. Chome transformed into a young man with deep green hair. Smirking, he whispered, you are a strange demon. Naruto, truly greater than both human and demon. Picking up Fu, he flew off to her forest home so she could rest. Time skip. What do you mean? He hit. Taki Nagato reported that when they raided the village, she had no Jinchuriki seal, and the girl revealed it was Naruto who had appeared with 3 women, one of which fit Ray's description and the other who was present for his attack. Jiraiya read off the shorthand notes his students delivered to him. Growling, Minato ran a hand through his hair. How long ago did this happen? Shuffling the papers, Jiraiya compared dates. Approximately 3 weeks ago, 3 days after his hit on Konoha. God damn it, tell Akatsuki to move ahead of schedule. We need the other Jinchuriki captured before Naruto can get to the rest. We can salvage the situation. He will understand the complications under these circumstances. Nodding his acceptance, Jiraiya turned sharply from the office, intent to spend as little time possible in his student's presence. Still angry over the loss of Tsunade, even though it had been well over 6 months since her death, he refused to attend the wedding or anything outside of work. Before the door could close, Kushina had entered and rapped on the sill. Can I come in? Looking up from the mess of papers his sensei left him, Minato nodded wearily to his wife. Yeah, I have time. He stacked the report and put it off to the side. Kushina took a seat hastily, eager to talk. So what is the news? The Nanabi is gone as well. That is 5 of the 9 bijou. Kushina's face quickly turned worried. This is not good, Minato. The Covenant stated we needed them all. We have already lost 4 of them. How will we? Cut off by Minato, pounding the desk. I know the stipulations of the pact, but unless he provides more help directly, then there is nothing we can do. We will have to continue and hope it is enough. Those words did nothing to soothe her. We should have never used the summoning the sage. It sealed for this exact reason for centuries. How could I have mentioned it? My father trusted me with it, and I betrayed him. The first Uzumaki to use the summoning since the sage. There was no other choice. Konoha was losing the 3rd war. We were on the brink of decimation. It was our only option. Minato spoke tensely. Then we should have surrendered. Look at what it has cost us so far, our first son, our daughter, and now even Konoha is at risk with the power Naruto is gathering. Slap. The sound of Minato's hand meeting her cheek sounded clearly. To even consider surrendering would have been a humiliation worse than death. Composing himself, Minato continued, using the summons gave us the power to win the war. He gave me the Hiraishin and you the chakra chains. Together we turned the tides and almost won the war ourselves. I agree we have lost much, our son and now our daughter running off, but we stand to lose everything if we don't hold up our end of the deal. Kushina choked back the tears threatening to fall from her eyes. We still should have never asked the god for help. We didn't understand the price we needed to pay. Sighing deeply at his wife's single track mind, he ushered her out. Kushina, you need Rest, go home and take a nap, I'll bring dinner on my way home. After Kushina was gone, the yandame closed the door and sat at his desk holding his head with Kushina. The extravagant red-haired woman walked home in a daze as she thought of her first son and how things could have been then of her daughter, and how she should have stood up for Rei when she was obviously against the marriage. Kushina was barely aware she arrived home as she swiftly entered, and was in her daughter's room before she knew it. Kushina stood gazing around at the mess that was never cleaned after Rei's hasty departure. Kushina sat on the made bed and began folding strewn about clothes, tidying up. Should her daughter ever return? Tears began pouring from her eyes as she folded, leaving dark blotches where they saline water landed. The Namikaze woman was lost on how many minutes or hours she spent looking at each piece of clothing, thinking back to when Rei had worn this or that, and each was a memory that only fueled her agony. Kushina closed her eyes, forcing the tears out, and when she opened them, laying among the clutter, they landed on the first successful Horatian marker her daughter had created. Minato had explained how his Horatian would be passed down to their kids, and each would have their own unique marker to call on the bloodline gifted from the god. She never understood them, they all just looked like beautiful calligraphy as they had no real sealing glyphs included on them aside from the chakra recognition. Setting aside the folded clothes, she picked up the carefully framed paper and removed the protection. Kushina traced the crisp lines with her dainty finger, leaving a blue trail as her chakra filled the ink. She always loved how the markers glowed. Having looked at paper long enough, she tossed it to the bed and went about cleaning. The paper flipped and drifted, slowly illuminating more as it neared the bed. Kushina noticed the light and turned just in time to see a flash of red and yellow before the room now held 3 people. Kushina's mouth opened in preparation to scream before a large hand came around her waist and mouth, blocking any sound or movement. She prepared. Struggling ensued, and she thrashed her legs, kicking and muffling screams, but the iron-like arms refused to budge. The woman's eyes darted around, looking for an instrument to aid in her escape before someone blocked her view. Locking eyes with the newcomer, she immediately recognized the face and the gestures to calm down. Finally her struggling ceased and the hand left her mouth. Rei, oh my gosh sweetie. Kushina reached her hands out and her daughter took hold of the outstretched limbs warmly. Mom, I've missed you. Nodding to the third person, the arm released Kushina's waist and the mother and daughter embraced. After Kushina had finished hugging and touching Rei's face to truly convince herself her daughter was in the flesh, did she finally truly took notice of the third occupant, forcing her daughter behind her. Chains erupted, racing towards the stock-still man, but before they touched him, a wave of his hands and the chains dematerialized with the particles swirling into his body. Rei gasped and grabbed her mother's shoulder. Mom, stop, you're only going to make him mad. Kushina ignored her daughter's plea and began gathering her chakra to produce more chains and hope to overwhelm whatever was happening, finally building a sufficient amount. Kushina, ready to unleash until he disappeared, and a firm hand landed on her other shoulder and her strength immediately vanished. Weakened knees, Kushina crumpled to the floor on all fours. What did you do to me? She spoke in panted breath. The younger Namikaze grabbed her mom's shoulders and helped her to the bed. Mom, you need to just relax. Naruto isn't going to do anything. To make her point, she sent a look at the aloof man, who merely grunted his acknowledgement and turned away slightly. Kushina slowly turned from Naruto and once again grabbed her daughter. I thought I wouldn't see you again. I'm sorry for not listening to you about the Uchiha boy, but if you stay here I promise you won't marry him. Your father won't have a say. Kushina continued to mutter more things to make her stay. Her babbling stopped when her daughter pushed her away slightly. Mom, I can't stay. That was one thing Kushina did not want to hear. But why sweetie? Whatever it is, I can help. Anything you want I can do, just please stay. The waterworks were beginning to start once more. How did you get here? I felt the marker and I let it pull me. With Naruto, silence enveloped the room. Mom, I need you to tell me why you sealed the QB into Naruto. The woman sobered quickly. Oh, Kushina did not expect that request. Looking over to Naruto, Kushina could still see the tiny baby used for the sealing. That is a long story. It started 24 years ago during the Third War. Flashback. Blood sprayed across the lush grass as Minato ripped his kunai from the man's body, letting him bleed out quickly. At the same time, Kushina had impaled another ninja, leaving only one left to deal with. Taking a quick survey, they both saw the last one turn tail, hoping to escape and report. Kushina and Minato pursued the man for a distance, easily clearing past the bridged ravine and borders well into enemy territory, but they couldn't let this ninja to escape. Finally, it seemed the man had slowed and Minato tackled him to the dirt. They struggled, but finally Minato had him into choke hold, which quickly put him out. Untangling himself from the limp man, he went about divesting the enemy of pretty much everything. Kushina's hushed yell made him pause. Minato, get over here. Wrapping wire around the man's throat and limbs, he made sure he would not escape alive. Minato crept up beside his girlfriend's side. What is it? Minato saw the view of a decimated forest stretching as far as the eye could see, with an equal amount of tents now filling the space. both horrified at the massive forces of Iwakari and Kumo nestled far enough within their own borders to not be found but close enough to invade with certain victory. The duo backed away quickly, picking up their prisoner and making a break for safety. They raced through the night and day, making it back to Konoha in only 2 exhausting days, where they stashed their prisoner and reported to the Hokage. We saw it with our own eyes, thousands upon thousands, were there. Kushina exclaimed. Hiruzen visibly sagged under the news and rubbed his face. Thank you for bringing me this information, dismissed. The young ninjas bowed briefly and left with pensive looks upon their faces. After exiting the Hokage's tower, Kushina broke the silence. Minato, what do you think is going to happen? We can't defend against those numbers. I don't know, we have week before they would reach the walls of Konoha. Maybe the Hokage will come up with a plan. Kushina nodded uncertainly and replied, maybe he is considering a surrender. To prevent the deaths of so many. Minato jerked at her mention of surrender. No Konoha ninja would surrender. We would all fight to our last breath. They walked past in silence as they finally reached their small shared home. Minato immediately took to the couch, laying his head back while Kushina pulled out her family chest that now held the last memories of her family. The Uzumaki rummaged through the faded photos and family annals until she picked up the one her father gave her with strict instructions. I give you this scroll, daughter. You must never open it. Only dark and powerful things will come of its use. You must promise on your life that you will not allow it to see light. She heard her father's voice echo in her mind, gripping it tightly. She made her choice. She would break her vow to save her home. Minato, come here, she called out. Opening his eyes, he stumbled into their room and saw Kushina standing holding an old scroll. This was given to me by my father. It holds something incredibly powerful, but he told me to never open it. Minato sat her down on their bed and put an arm around her. Did he say what it was exactly? Kushina shook her head. No, only that it was ever opened once by the Sage of Six Paths to defeat the Jubi. The Namikaze reached for the scroll, but Kushina quickly ripped it away. No, my father entrusted it to me, so I will open it. And so she did, the wax seal crumbling and the paper unfurling for them to see. It was a set of instructions on how to do the summoning with very specific details. The blood of those wishing to call must soak the page, and a living human sacrifice finally scrawled in rust-colored ink. The pair assumed was blood on the bottom was, to summon this god is to invite a great evil and strife into your home. Assuming since the sage was the last to open it, that must have been his writing and blood. Kushina was the summoner, so she sat and began draining her blood into a bowl, and Minato would get the sacrifice. It was half an hour after her bloodletting did she feel well enough before she moved into the living room, and Minato returned with the captured ninja kneeling the prisoner. He held him there while Kushina held the scroll into the blood. After nothing happened for a few seconds, the blood began draining until not a drop was left, and she began the hand signs Kuchios Kamikainu. Finishing the sequence, a sickly black portal opened from the floor and a man with long black hair rose from the inky blackness. The unknown man began chuckling, which grew into a maniac laughter. Looking up, they saw the smoke pouring out of his eyes. It has been a while since someone had summoned me. Seeing the bound and gagged man, he smiled. Oh, and you even have an offering. I'm impressed. Now slit his throat. Minato hesitated briefly before glancing to his wife, who was equally uncomfortable with the being's presence. Well, don't keep me waiting. Do it before I kill you both for summoning me, the god bellowed, drawing a kunai. Minato easily slit it across the man's throat, and the life-sustaining water erupted from the cut, splattering the living room. The man screamed with the first cut, but it quickly turned into gurgles as blood filled his throat and pulsed with his now slowing heartbeat. Ah, good, such obedient humans you are. Now I believe you have summoned me to do something. Kushina spoke. Yes, our village is waging in a war we can't win. We ask your aid in ending the battles and bring peace. So it does look like I'm needed. So what do I get for helping you make this peace? The god moved silently as he circled the pair and inspected the trinkets they had lying around. The couple looked surprised that he wanted more, but wasn't that man the sacrifice for your help? Disappearing, he was now beside Minato with an arm draped over his shoulder. Oh no, that was to stop me from ripping your bodies apart and leaving them for the maggots. What I want in return for this is so much more personal and much harder to come by. Vanishing her was now behind Kushina with a hand on her flat stomach. What I want is your firstborn. Brushing his nose through her long hair, he inhaled deeply. You smell delicious. You picked a good one. Here the Uzumaki spun as her elbow passed through the smoke where his head was. No, you won't get any of my children. The god stood back at their front and feisty too. Alas, I am not here for this. Minato moved to his girlfriend's side. Is there anything else you want? But any kids are off the table, Minato said. While preparing to fight, the god saw them tensing and he brought his hands up. In peace, I think it is more than a fair trade. If you think about it, I will give you the strength to bring your peace, and all I ask for is one life. Let me show you what you will gain for this one teeny tiny request of mine. Once again he was next to Minato with his palm open. I will give you the ability to be everywhere, to appear anywhere at any time. As the god whispered his honey sweet words, the pair watched a miniature Minato standing before an army before vanishing, and the army began erupting into sprays of blood. Watch them flee before your speed, and sure enough the miniature people did begin to run, but none of them escaped. Appearing beside Kushina, he showed her a similar demonstration of what he could grant them. You don't look like the one for speed, you want to be in control. To stop everyone scoffing, he began again. Of course you do, you are an aspiring mom, so it's in your personality. Well, take a look at what you could do. A tiny Kushina stood before another army, and from her body blue chains slithered from her body and arched ready to strike like coiled snakes, and strike they did. The chains whizzed through the army, twisting, wrapping and tearing through anyone that came close to you. Will have chakra so strong you can form chains of unbreakable strength and precision. From the gentle hold of these chains to the sharpness of any blade you will be capable of. The vision vanished from his hand in a puff of smoke. Once again he was standing before them. He watched as they looked to each other before whispering lowly, Minato, I don't think we should do this anymore. We should just tell him no and let this war end. We will lose Konoha, but I want my children more. Kushina, I know how you feel. I would want nothing more than to say no, but what will happen if IWA decides to simply execute or imprison the shinobi? The Uzumaki chewed her lip and thought, you don't know that maybe they would let us live peacefully. After taking hold of her shoulder, Minato looked annoyed. You know that would never happen. If we do this we can have as many children as you want, 2, 3, a dozen, as many as you want, but I want them to live in peace. Closing her eyes, Kushina gently nodded, letting her boyfriend take the lead. We accept your deal for the life of our firstborn. The god nodded at first, but he looked to be thinking, then shook his head. I don't know, now that I have stopped to think about it, I am getting the short end of this stick. The couple looked more concerned. I want to sweeten the deal a little more for myself. I know of your bijou and I can say they have piqued my interest. How about we get a little something more on both our ends? We just want to end this war, nothing else. Kushina exclaimed, nearing tears, as she had already given up one child. Oh, I know, a noble thing you are doing, but I want the bijou as well. Now we can't do that. They're guarded fiercely and incredibly powerful. Even with your powers they would win, Minato said. The god frowned. His sly words and charming personality left. I'm not really asking anymore. I hold the cards you want and I lose nothing from you walking away. You do things my way or your precious little home will be a memory. Holding his hands behind his back, the god paced and told them how it was gonna go. You will get me the 9 bijous sealed in your Jinchuriki or not, and your firstborn child. In return I will grant you the strength and power to end your pitiful war and bring this so-called peace. I am even feeling generous. Your speed is inherited by your children and their children for 4 generations. Now do we have a deal? The god said, holding his hand out. While we need more time to think on this, you are asking a lot, Minato tried to diplomatically say without blowing the god off entirely. Going once, you can't expect us going twice. All right, we will do it, Minato shouted while taking hold of the outstretched hand. The cruel grin appeared on this god's face once again. Excellent. Black chains moved around Minato's hand before flowing into a circle of black over his heart. I haven't forgotten about you, my dear. The god appeared holding his hand to Kushina's stomach, embedding his power directly into her womb. Your firstborn is mine, and into it shall the QB be sealed. You will bring the QB on the night of your child's birth. Do not summon me until then. Another black portal appeared beneath the god's feet, and he began to sink. It was such a pleasure to meet you both. Best wishes. The god broke into hysterical laughing and continued to echo. After his portal closed up, Kushina collapsed and began sobbing. Minato wrapped his arms around her and tears even flowed from the blonde's eyes. Flashback. And the next day we figured out how to work our new abilities, and the day after we presented them to the Sandaime. Kushina rubbed the tears she had from remembering the day they essentially signed away everything. You know the rest from history. Our combined strength obliterated whatever alliance or formed coalition. It was shortly after that the war had ended and Konoha's reparations from the other countries revitalized the village. Naruto spoke for the first time since arriving. And what about my birth? Did you feel anything that night? Kushina lowered her head in shame. We loved you very much when you were born with your brother. Why was I chosen instead of the other son? We initially didn't know which, as you were both our firstborn, being twins. Only difference was your etched cheeks, so we had both of you prepared. Minato drew the QB from its cave and I summoned the god. He said, the one marked in black, and you had the black marks, and just like that I was no longer loved after you traded me away. Naruto snarled. We offered you to him after the sealing. He laughed and said we were to kill you in 15 years once the soul merger was complete, but I never stopped loving you. We thought our son was no longer himself again. Naruto curbed his distaste for this woman. Then Yui lied to you, Kiyomi, and I had only partially merged at our death, so I endured everything that happened. The blazing kunai splitting my flesh, each part of my body cut out, and even the last moments as the Yondaime stomped on my chest. Kushina buried her face into her hands, crying at both the brutal memory and the knowledge that her son had felt the torture. We didn't know, she rasped out. Of course you didn't know. You were too gutless to face defeat, so you sold me away and any shred of humanity You had left. Ray had enough of her brother's verbal assaults. Stop, Naruto. She has had enough. You may not like her, but she is still your mother. She is not my mother. I am a demon now, and nothing you say or do will ever change that. I am immortal. I have no attachments to mortals now. Ray looked about ready to cry. I am going back to IWA. Goodbye, Mom. Don't tell Dad I was here. Or about the marker. Standing up, Ray waited for her brother's hand on her shoulder. No, he was not her brother. He was only Naruto. Blue yokai seeped from the necklace, powering the long-range transfer, and their bodies began vibrating before disappearing completely. Kushina collected the marker, stashing it into her pockets and cleaning up the room once again, with tears escaping occasionally. Back in IWA, the paper marker on the floor of Naruto's house lit up and the duo materialized. Ray shrugged the hand off her shoulder and she dashed from the house seeking solitude. Kiyomi came into the room with a confused look on her face. I just saw Ray crying. What happened? Naruto turning his head away, he softly replied, I got angry and said some things I shouldn't have, then we came back and she ran off immediately. The confusion turned into a stern gaze. Then you will have to go apologize. I said I shouldn't have said them, not that they weren't true. He snapped back, taking a deep breath. Kiyomi prevented herself from getting angry. I will go calm her down, but you will apologize for whatever you did. Naruto went to retort, but Kiyomi left him no room. I said you will apologize. Am I clear? Growling at the back of his throat, he replied, Crystal nodding her head. Kiyomi gracefully left to find the distraught young woman. Naruto on the other hand sighed and went to have a nap before the headache was to begin. Time skip. Ray slowed down. Kiyomi shouted after the sobbing blonde, what happened while you two were away? She followed up after the young woman stopped looking around. There were no buildings or audience to the girl's emotions, so she created a small bench to rest on. The Namikaze girl wiped her eyes ruefully, trying to stop the tears from streaming down her face. One of my erasure markers went off in Konoha, so I took Naruto with me to get it and leave. It turns out my mom had activated one by accident. We learned why all of this happened to Naruto, why Mom and Dad did the sealing. They sold Naruto to a god for their abilities to stop the war. The black and raccoon eyes from her makeup smearing told more occurred. Why are you crying then, sweetie? What else happened? The demoness wrapped an arm around Ray's shoulders. Naruto is such a jerk. Mom said she never stopped loving him even now, but he just got angry. He made her cry and I got mad and told him to stop. Then he exploded and said he didn't care about me. Sighing, Kiyomi rubbed circles on the young lady's back to soothe her tears. Ray, you have to take Naruto with a grain of salt. He is very impulsive, but he has proven he cares for you by stopping the wedding and letting you continue to use his yokai. He didn't mean what he said. I will talk with him and we will clear this all up for you. Kissing the girl's head. Now clean yourself up, your mascara is running. Kiyomi wiped a black tear trail from the girl's cheek. The blonde wrapped her arms around the crimson-eyed woman in a hug. Thank you, Kiyomi. Releasing the hug, Kiyomi left to find her abrasive other half back with Naruto in his plush bed. The demon had dozed off shortly after Kiyomi left, thinking on what he learned from Kushina. Why would he give them instructions to kill me before the merger was complete? It makes no sense. His mind ran in circles, looking for some sort of reason beyond insanity. Minutes after his blissful slumber began, he was awoken by a kick to his bed. Killer instincts were full swing when his body sprung from the bedding, and skillful maneuvering had his body positioned behind the offender with his arms wrapped around a delicate neck and wings sprouted to hold the body still. Quickly his vision registered deep red hair that he has only seen on his partner. Letting the hold go and his wings to vanish, he fell back into the bed with an arm covering his eyes. Ugh, you shouldn't wake me like that. Kiyomi rolled her eyes. You should go find Ray now and apologize for being an ass. The arm raised and his eyes narrowed. What for? I didn't do anything wrong. He let the arm drop. You made Ray cry, so obviously you did something wrong. Naruto snorted. Right or wrong? His perspective. All I did was tell the truth. Sarcastically, Kiyomi urged him to talk. Such a sarcastic bastard. What was this truth that you needed to make your sister cry? Naruto was starting to get annoyed with the tone. She told me Kushina was my mother, like she still meant something to me. I was mad, so I told her in no uncertain terms she was not my mother. I think there's more than what you are telling me. Naruto grumbled a bit as he shifted on the bed. I told her I didn't care about Kushina or any other mortal. She took it the wrong way. Kiyomi closed her eyes and sighed. How was she supposed to take it? Naruto, you need to think before saying these things. You're the demon with thousands of years of knowledge. How can you act immaturely? Naruto kept silent, already knowing he should have been more tactful. The quietness held for a few more seconds before Kiyomi spoke. So what are you going to do about this? Sitting up, Naruto rubbed his brow, both in preparation for a headache to form any moment. I can talk with her and get this to blow over. I will think of something. Kiyomi knew this was probably the worst solution. Why can't you just tell her you're sorry and you love her? That would be the easiest way. You already know I can't do that. Slipping her slender arms around his neck, she hugged him close to herself. I cannot make you do anything, Naruto, but you should try, not for me, but for yourself. Accepting the embrace, he pulled her flush to himself. I love you, Kiyomi. Quick kisses and pecks were exchanged. Before Naruto pushed himself to his feet and made for the exit, closing the mighty doors of his large home, his wings materialized from black haze and he took flight, tracking the small pendant Ray wore. Ray sat next to a park pond, slowly rubbing off the small amount of makeup she wore. Red lips faded to a light pink and rosy red cheeks lost some of the color. Watching her reflection, she reached out, touching the surface, causing image to ripple. She felt a small gust, and when the crystal water stilled, she saw her brother. No, she saw Naruto standing behind. Instantly the soft look solidified into a stern gaze. What do you want? Naruto, already anticipating the cold shoulder. Naruto held a neutral expression. I came here to talk about what I said earlier. After seeing Kushina and hearing their selfish reasoning for what they did to me, it wasn't just the ceiling, what they did to me, and you pushing what I never had or wanted anymore. I shouldn't have said what I did at the time, shouldn't have said it, not a sorry or explanation. It just slipped out. Heat started entering the previously cold voice of this Namikaze girl. Already Naruto could tell this was going south quick, so he tried to wrap this up before it could boil over on him. I shouldn't have let my anger get the better of me, but I did, and I'm sorry that I said it. Now the heat from her voice must have entered Ray's blood. His pale cheeks were flush and she formed a scowl. Sorry for it being true, or sorry that I heard it. A little of both, I suppose. What you said to our mom and me really hurt. We can narration back to Konoha, talk to her and explain the whole situation there. That was again, she just couldn't let it be that he would never accept the woman as a mother, especially not now that he was an immortal demon after they brutally murdered him. Please don't refer to her as my mother. I already said she is not and will never be that to me. Naruto, she loves you. She never meant to do any harm to you. You just need to let her explain. I'm sure you can. Forgive her. Tiring of this topic, she put everyone else above a small helpless child. As far as I can tell, that is the furthest thing from love. A normal person wouldn't do that to their own child if they had even a shred of moral in their soul. I can never accept her as anything other than someone who aided in killing me when I was mortal. Naruto, you just have to trust her. It was for the best. If they hadn't done that, then we have may never existed altogether. Naruto was getting talked down to by a woman, and it was hitting the pride he had to have gotten from being a demon. Jaw clenched and narrowed eyes, Naruto snatched Ray from her seat, taking off into the air. Naruto's wings pumped faster and faster, gaining speed and altitude. Ray barely had a chance to squeak as the rush of wind and shift in gravity held her breathless for a few seconds. Finally Naruto's climb seemed to end as he reached a hair over 4 kilometers above ground, lifting Ray up to eye level. Naruto spoke in an even tone. This was my experience as a mortal with those I trusted, feeling the bite of the thin cold air. Her retort was stolen as Naruto released his firm grasp. The first handful seconds of the fall were almost calm as the whipping winds silenced all other sounds. She watched Naruto's frame get smaller and smaller before she broke through the clouds and her body rotated to see the earth below. The rushing air and adrenaline made her breath short, heart beat faster, and pupils dilated as panic set in. Terrified screams tore from her throat. Her body tumbled helplessly through the atmosphere, finally needing to breath. Her screams stopped and Ray tried to focus on surviving. Closing her eyes, she called on the brilliant ocean blue Yukai of her pendant. Immediately the jewel responded, providing a burst of the energy needed required. Catching up to the tumbling girl, Naruto's Yukai exploded from the pendant, and his dive came to halt with his mighty wings flaring out. Already he had turned and lazily flew off. He was going to need to find somewhere else to sleep as Kiyomi would not let him. Once seeing the situation turn out with Ray banking hard to the left, Naruto just dodged the barreling form of the Namikaze. Leveling out, they hovered as both sets of wings holding them aloft, simply staring each other down. The demon broke the silence first. This isn't something you want to do, Ray snarling. She bit back. No, this is exactly what I want. If you want to apologize on your own, I will make you sorry. Bursting into action, she darted for a straight punch. Turning right, he watched the slender blue-colored fist enter through the space his head did moments ago, slapping the fist upwards. Naruto jammed his elbow into her gut, sending her back, resuming a lazy float. Naruto crossed his mighty arms as he watched the girl recover. Ray resumed her charge, each punch and kick missing their intended target by insignificant margins, or stopped by the solid muscle of the demon, each strike punctuated by the pumping of large wings generating the force behind each blow. Ray threw an arcing haymaker which Naruto held his forearm to block. To his surprise, the blue fist phased through his arm and the true hidden fist sailed beneath the raised arm, striking him solidly in the jaw. Head spinning, Naruto's body spun before he gained his bearings. Wings catching air, he stopped his descent, his eyes narrowed at the crooked smirk across the fiery blue visage. The sharp elliptical shape took hold of his pupils. Ray grinned at her success and the heavy hit. She could teach him a lesson, yet she didn't know what lesson she was trying to enforce, but damn did it feel good. Readying for another bout, she prepared to close the gap, but she was too late. Naruto's chakra exploding, propelling him forward, generating a sonic boom. She did not have time to put up a block as he slammed into her, sending them both higher into the sky. His strikes were solid and perfect as each succeeded in driving the air from her body. There was no defense Against his onslaught that only battered and bruised her body while the Yukai did its best to protect and heal, a final uppercut sent Rei's body into a slow arc before the Yukai finally dissipated and her unconscious body began its free fall. Naruto watched with minuscule regret as her battered form fell further, catching up to the limp form. He wrapped his arms under her arms and knees before landing softly on the ground. Already Kiyomi had raced to meet them after feeling the release of the Yukai. Naruto, what happened? Take her. He never met her eyes and handed the young lady over before lifting off the ground and creating a sonic boom as he flew faster and further from his home in Iwa. With a final thunderclap he vanished, leaving only the dispersing clouds to show he had been in the skies. Time skip. The deafening howl of wind as Naruto flew served to drown out any of his thoughts. Only a scant few minutes of flying at Mach 1 speed. The borders of Iwa no Kuni came and went. The landscape he had shaped for a country quickly changed to lush forest with multitudes of winding rivers and waterfalls. Feeling out, he found the chakra signature familiar to his own and his supersonic flight now angled to his new destination. Chome had been walking with Fu in the lush undergrowth, just enjoying the peaceful weeks following his release. Chome actually wanted to thank Naruto even more, as after he had for resting he found that with his new existence he no longer felt hungry. The search for more powerful Yukai that had drawn him to crossing into this realm had ended. He was truly free. Fu enjoyed her time with Chome since her harrowing experience with death. The bijou was the closest thing she ever had to a brother. His presence, while sealed within, he was a source of comfort. He is the only person that didn't speak to her with harsh words. The green-haired girl was downcast, thinking about her past. Before she brightened greatly, now she had her big brother in the real world. Now latching onto his arm, she let out a shining smile to the bijou. Chome smiled back to Fu. What has got you so happy? For the girl only hugged his arm tighter. I never thought I would have any family, but you're the best brother I could ask for. The former Seven Tails only chuckled. This was a reoccurring thing since his release. She would get a sad expression before latching onto him, grinning ear to ear. Well, I never thought I would ever have a little sister, either, especially not a great one like you. Rustling the mint hair, the girl let go and they continued strolling through the woods, idling, chatting about anything that came to mind. Mid-conversation, Chome stopped paying attention and started staring intently at the forest canopy. At Chome, what's up? Fu queried softly, confused by his sudden change in mood. The bijou parted his lips like he was about to respond before there was a large crash before a solid beam of light now illuminated the kneeling and parted winged form of Naruto was seen by Fu. The girl, recognizing her week-long tormentor, hid behind the deep green cloak of her brother, giving a shallow bow to the one who free him. Good afternoon, Naruto. To what do I owe for your visit? The winged demon's wings dissolved in a hazy mist before giving a small nod of his head toward his kin. If you have a moment, I want to talk to you for a few minutes. Sure. He turned to Fu. This will just be a minute, Fu. I'll be right back. The now shy girl gave a weak nod in acknowledgement, beckoning Chome to follow after him. Naruto walked a little further through the sprawling trees. They walked for a bit before Naruto stopped. Chome, how is freedom treating you? Thinking on the short time in the world without the constant urges to kill and consume when not sealed, it has been very refreshing not being restricted to second-hand feelings within a Jinchuriki. To tell the truth, if I had the choice I would have traded everything to have this from birth. Why do you ask? You seem downcast. Naruto must have had a very bewildered look on his face because Chome gave a small chuckle. I don't really want to talk about it right now. Moreover, what do you mean trade everything for this? You haven't been sealed that long from what I remember. No, but not having the clawing hunger at the back of my mind is well worth everything before it. Now the blonde demon was very surprised. You don't feel the hunger? How is this possible? All demons feel it. Giving a non-committal shrug, Chome only had an inkling to the cause. Ever since you absorbed and released me, I haven't felt it, and I am definitely enjoying this new lease on life. Naruto's eyes tracked around, thinking on this extraordinary discovery before settling on a determined look. So you said you felt this after I reformed you? This needs testing. His eyes closed and he concentrated on his mental plane. Now Naruto's mental plane was not the same as when he was human, and even more profoundly different than Kiyomi's. What once a winding maze of water-soaked bricks was now one straight hallway lined to the visible ceiling with cells, and in every cell was a motionless demon lying in a simple bed. Walking through the hall, he saw and remembered each and every one he brutally killed and consumed. Both voracious predator and peaceful demons lined the walls. Finally reaching the two cells he came for, the bars vanished and the confined demon bodies levitated to his outstretched hands. The mindscape bled into the real world, and within each palm Naruto held a small orb of his own energy, lobbing the Yukai a few meters away. They quickly formed a man-sized hulking crimson gorilla and white dolphin horse. With a roar, the gorilla slammed its chest before realizing where he was, or rather where he was not. Is it done? You have fulfilled your promise. Naruto shook his head in the negative. No, there have been complications since we fought. Goku frowned, remembering what felt like what happened seconds ago. Flashback. Naruto drew the demon close. Do not fear the end. When I become a god, I will bring you back to life. Flashback end. Then how am I here? Naruto waved the question off before prompting with his own. Tell me, Goku. Kokuo, how do you feel? The demons narrowed their eyes and briefly glanced at each other before the gorilla responded. What do you mean? I feel the same as I always have. Then look at Chome the demon and tell me what you want to do. Goku grinned and focused on Chome and prepared for the blinding rush of hunger that would follow. The seconds dragged on, yet it never came. The whispers were no longer there, and he felt free. What is happening? It's not there. What have you done? The great red ape looked to Kokuo for confirmation. It wasn't only him, and he saw the dolphin has a similar unsure expression. Naruto glanced back to Chome with a grin. I guess once I absorb and reform a demon from my yokai, they no longer feel a connection to the old god. Kokuo and Goku quickly took on more humanoid shapes. Goku now in a sleeveless karate gi with the edges frayed, and long shaggy red hair and a fierce look on his face. The Gobi now stood in a light blue monk's robe with his white hair swept back, partially hiding the blunted ivory horns adorning his head, and a blank expression. The newly revived demon pair took a deep breath and let it out slowly, feeling better than ever now. With nothing pressing on their minds, they didn't have much time to relish the moment as Naruto addressed the group. I need you three to come to Makai with me. All three looked surprised. They had no reason to go back now that they were free. Why? Chome asked quickly, not wanting to leave his new little sister so shortly after being free. Naruto ran his hand through his hair before responding. The old god has surfaced. He is the complication I ran into. Then why travel to Makai? That is where he would most likely be gathering strength, Goku announced powerfully. The blonde demon shook his head. No, he has sequestered himself somewhere else. He fears being found and obliterated again. For the first time since revival, Kokuo spoke, his voice low and soft. What is in Makai that you need? Then strength. A concerned look passed over Komai's face. What do you have planned for Makai? Consuming more yokai. Not with this new development. When I was once human, I learned how to drain the powers of others, and that ability passed over to when I became a demon. I can take the entirety of a demon's yokai simply through touch, but it appears I can now also release the energy out and revive those I have absorbed, but they won't feel the hunger anymore. He swept his eyes over them. I need to concentrate the strength of Makai if I want to have a chance at the old god. Why fight at all if the old god is hiding away like you say? We don't need to do anything. We can go on without lifting a finger or putting our necks on the line, Goku selfishly replied, not wanting to run off and get himself killed again. He is only hiding for now. Eventually he will reappear more than ready to regain himself. Our only chance is to bring the fight to him before he can get stronger. Each of the three revived demons had silent conversations between each other before Chome stepped towards Naruto. I owe my freedom and life to you, Naruto. I will follow you. Kokuo too stepped up and gave a low bow, differing the higher status to Naruto. You took my life once, but returned it to me when you had no reason to choose me. I will follow you as well. All looked towards Goku for his answer. The redhead crossed his large arms and rolled his head before opening his eyes. Fine, but we better win. Naruto now sported a large fanged grin. Then let's go. Waving his hand, the air wavered before the intense power of Makai could be felt as the Terran space opened. Chome stepped back before sprouting his wings. Give me a minute, I will be right back. Zipping through the trees, he headed back to his adoptive sister. Fu was sitting on a gnarled root doodling in the dirt with a stick before she saw her brother land before her. Chome, you're back. How did everything go? The former Seven Tails simply pulled the girl into a hug. Fu, I have to leave. I don't know how long I will be gone, but I will return for her part. Fu was speechless. She only just had her new brother for less than a month before he had to leave her all alone for an undetermined amount of time. Please no, Chome, I can't go back to being alone. I won't bug you with so many questions about your home. If you stay, you can have the shower first and use all the hot water. Please, please. Her bargaining only got quieter as she went on till she was simply crying into his green cloak. Chome simply stroked her hair softly. Fu, it's going to be okay. I will come back, and when I do I'll tell you all about where I came from. We will leave Taki, and we will travel the world. Leaning back from the hug, the mint-topped girl sniffled. You promised. The demon grabbed her head and placed a kiss on her forehead. Promise. Naruto had gotten impatient and followed after Chome, waiting a bit away, letting them have their moment before entering the clearing. Alright, let's go again. Space was torn open and Fu became the first human to see the incredible sights of Makai before the foursome stepped through and it sealed up behind them. Be safe, Chome. Back in IWA at the same time, Kiyomi placed Rei in her bed before the Namikaze stirred Kiyomi, whereas Naruto the Demoness brushed the blonde locks of hair out of the girl's face. I don't know, he flew off after handing you off. I am sure he will be back though. She continued tucking the girl into bed before the ever-present feeling of Naruto vanished. Her eyes widened in alarm and nausea at the sudden loss. Grabbing her head, Kiyomi stumbled backwards, hearing the muffled shouts of Rei before the world lost focus before going black. Now in Makai the portal sealed closed and Naruto too was experiencing the disorienting effects of suddenly being shut off from Kiyomi as he stumbled forward. Chome took his shoulder. Are you okay, Naruto? The blonde pushed back the urge to simply lay on the ground. Yeah, I'm fine now, we don't have time to waste. Standing straight, the four demons took off for the nearest population of demons.